Hey there, Around the Layout listeners. With advanced previews of upcoming episodes and monthly giveaways, now's the time to become an Operating Crew member. For just $3 a month, you'll get an exclusive membership sticker, your name listed on the Operating Crew roster, and automatic entry into our monthly giveaway drawings. Just as important, your financial support keeps all of our episodes from behind paywalls and free of those annoying car insurance commercials you hear on other podcasts. Joining the Operating Crew is quick and easy. Head to patreon.com/Around the Layout podcast. And if you missed that, you'll find a link on our website, aroundthelayout.com. And thank you for being a listener. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Around the Layout, where model railroaders come to tell their story. My name is Ray Arnott, and it's time once again to find out what's happening in model railroading. And again, no better guy to do that than the editor of Model Railroad News, Tony Cook. Tony, welcome back.
Hey, Ray, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's good to see. We did kind of a midstream one, so I didn't get to miss you too much, but it was good to talk about the ScaleTrains Exact Rail acquisition there.
Oh, that was an excellent show with Shane Wilson, of ScaleTrains. Yeah, I thought that was, and you said lots of folks downloaded and listened to that. That's been one of the hot topics this year.
Absolutely. And we had a great time talking with Shane Wilson. And then right after that, you got busy. You were off to do a whole bunch of things.
I have been. I've been on like this big circle of from Texas to Missouri to Nebraska, over to Colorado, back down to Texas. So I basically hit every state in and between, going to Spring Creek Model Trains and a little family time in Colorado. And yeah.
I saw you on a live with Athern. You've just been busy.
It's fun stuff.
Absolutely. We're gonna have to get you a world tour shirt. Put all your stops on the back of it. And I know one of them is also going to be the St. Louis RPM, which kind of bridges us over to our guest who just was on the show talking about the St. Louis RPM, and now he's back to talk about a fantastic book that he has compiled.
And who's that?
I would think that would be Scott Thornton. Let's bring Scott Thornton in.
I know that guy.
Scott, welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. Good to be here.
Good to have you, Scott. It's a welcome back. Like I said, just another guy that I just seemingly talked to, but it's great to have you here. It's always a pleasure. And we kind of hinted, I think, on that show that we were going to be having you back to talk about this outstanding book. And, I've said before on the podcast that timing is everything. And I've just got my physical copy of this beautiful book called Scenic and Weathering Techniques that you compiled. And I can't wait to get into it and talk to you about this and learn how this all came about.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was quite the opportunity that was afforded me. And I ran with it. I think it turned out, if I do say so myself, I think it turned out pretty well.
Oh, I'd absolutely agree. Yeah, it was beautiful. I got to see it for the first time, Ray, up in Nebraska at Spring Creek. I'd seen digital copies of it and had known about it since way back that Scott was helping me with the Penline history book that White River produced. And he said, hey, I kind of got this idea, and started sharing with me some of the weathering. And wow, this is a great idea. And Kevin Udaly at White River Productions agreed, and the result is this book.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm so thankful that Kevin decided that it was an idea worth pursuing. And it took a little while to get the book produced, only because of the 13 contributors. These guys basically do this on a volunteer basis. I mean, they get compensated and that sort of thing. But you have to be patient, and a lot of these modeling adventures that are portrayed in the book take some time to produce, and so that's why there was a little bit of time involved with getting the book out. But now that it's out, I'm excited to see how it does. See if modelers will embrace it and enjoy it. And we'll go from there.
Yeah. So why don't we learn a little bit about how this project gets started and where the idea kind of gets birthed and moves forward?
Yeah. I follow a lot of different modelers online. And so with some of these modelers, I reach out to them and correspond. And so I develop some relationships with these guys. And then I see some of them at the shows, and we talk about different modeling approaches and techniques. And I've thought for quite a while that, let me back up. I am inspired tremendously by a lot of what comes out of Europe. And by that, I mean a lot of their publications. If you look at what the modelers over there design, it's a little bit different than what we see over here in North America. And I don't mean to, I'm not saying this to disparage any of the books that come out or magazines that come out. I think they're excellent over here. But for some reason, the European designers tend to be a little bit more free-flowing with how they present design, or how they integrate, I should say, design into their publications. And so I had been inspired by that. My background is I'm a recently retired but 30 plus year graphic designer. So this was my career, and my wheelhouse was publication design, and specifically editorial design, which is another way of saying magazine design. So I've done a lot of it and had a lot of experience. And the combination of the experience of doing this for so many years and then seeing what is coming out of Europe in terms of modeling design, I thought, wouldn't it be neat to emulate some of that for the modelers over here on the other side of the pond? And so I took inspiration and presented the idea to White River, and yeah, they bought into it, and the book is the result. And some of the things that I did differently and were inspired by was having the design be a little bit more dynamic. Like a lot of the publications that you see in the modeling press in the States follow a similar type of formula. A lot of narrative copy, photos that are medium to small size, that sort of thing. Not that they don't have large photos, but they're not used extensively through a book, let's say. And so what I wanted to do was come at it from a different angle. I wanted to make the book caption driven. So the captions for each photo would explain this, not only the step-by-steps, but anything else that the author wanted to convey. There's a little bit of narrative, like lengthier text, but it's very minimal. And then the photos, I tried to get as big as I possibly could. Some of them are small, but that's for elements that through the step-by-steps were not that important. But other than that, I tried to really blow up the photography so that modelers could get up close, see the details, and be inspired. So not only is the book not only does the book show step-by-steps, but it's also like a coffee table book where modelers could come back to it and look at those large photos and be inspired and go from there. So
yeah, the design of that book was something that you picked up on, Tony, and you were talking about.
Oh, absolutely. I saw Scott's work, as I say, before we started together on the Penline history book. Scott showed me a lot of samples of things he'd done, and I could kind of see that flair, that style, and I think it served the Penline book very well. And then he's taken it to another level, for this book that he's done. And those big pictures, that's at one time Model Railroad News, I think it was 2009 when it switched to the kind of more standard magazine size. But that's one of the feedback things I always get is I love the big pictures. And again, that's what we're here for. We're showing the models, whether it's like Scott's how-to book or mine where I'm showing new products is, they want to see that, especially these days when you don't have as many hobby shops or things sell out so fast. It's like, well, I never got to see one of those. So yeah, a big picture is so important in this book. I just thought it was beautiful.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Tony. Get up close and see the detail. That's the mantra.
I think you mentioned the different participants, but for this is not like you basically doing a how-to book where you cover everything, but you do have some projects in it as well. And how many different modelers are represented in the book?
There's 13 different modelers. I do contribute on the very last page of the book. I compiled some information on how to use a simplified color palette. So that was my contribution to the book, if you will, besides the design and compiling everything. But of the 13 contributors, some are well-known names. Others are introduced through the book. And so that's a neat thing, too, because we have a nice mix of well-known modelers and modelers that are just, being introduced and are coming on the scene. And hopefully we'll see them contributing more as time goes on in some of the other modeling magazines and publications.
Yeah, there's some great names here. In fact, names very familiar to the Around the Layout podcast audience. You have Tom Johnson in there with that Cass County layout that's just absolutely gorgeous. And now he's got it in fall colors, which is amazing. Rob Arsenault from Weather My Trains. I mean, you want to talk about paint. There's a guy that could tell you everything you ever wanted to know about paint. And he does a great job with an article. And then some guys that I know personally, Butch Eiler. I operated with Butch on Mark Herrick's BNSF Montana division layout, and didn't know I was standing that close to a phenomenal modeler, and got to see his work in this book. It's absolutely outstanding. And then Neil Schofield, of course, with that CP Rail Newport and Lindenville sub, just absolutely gorgeous work. How did you get to the selection part of getting this lineup? How did that come about?
Well, I had been compiling a list of different modelers over time with the idea that maybe this could come to fruition. So I had just kept a database of different ones that when I ran across them and I saw different types of approaches to modeling, I thought, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I wonder if, this modeler might be interested in doing a step-by-step. So, for example, there's a guy in the book named James A. Powell, and James has a YouTube channel called Dirt Spot 7. So if anybody wants to check out more of his work. But James is a professional model builder out in California, and he owns a company called Monster Model Works. I think I have that correct. And they produce a lot of their work. When you go to their website, they can't even share because it's all proprietary. They've done a lot of work for like Disney Studios and that type of thing. So when I came across James's YouTube channel, I was inspired by what he was doing, and he models on a large scale. He's even into F scale. In fact, the lead photo on the start of his part of the book on the left side of the spread is F scale. And it's just, to die for. You get that large, you can really go to town with some of the textures and things you can do. So James is a new name, you might say, to the model railroading community, even though he's a model railroader and he's been around for a while. He's good friends with Jason Jensen. Some modelers would know Jason. Jason's a really talented guy. He's not in the book, but I think he just came out. Tony, you might know. Are you familiar with Jason?
Yes, yeah. You can find him on Facebook and other places, and I think he does some kits as well, doesn't he?
Yes, he just came out with a whole line of kits, but he's a really talented guy. So that's just one example of a new face. And then, like you mentioned, Ray, there's a lot of familiar names. With Tom Johnson, as a lot of people know, Tom's been covered quite extensively with his small layout of late. But what I tried to do with his work in this book is not focus on overall scenes, but get up close and show details. So virtually all the shots are close-up vignettes of his work, which is another way of looking at Tom's work, because the overall shots are great, but if you can go in and really show how his scenes are put together at the micro detail level, you gain even a greater appreciation for this guy, because it's like, holy smokes, man. Look at the texture on, like for example, he's got one of his elevators, Wayne feeds, is a concrete elevator, and the way that he created the texture on that, in an overall shot, you can't really see it, but when you get up close, you're like, my goodness gracious, how in the world did that guy do that? It's like seeing a master artist in the museum. You get up close and you're just mystified by how they do this. So, and then I'll mention another modeler, and I hope I don't destroy his last name, because I've actually never talked to him about how to pronounce his last name. He lives up, I think, in Quebec. His name's Mathieu. I think this is how you pronounce it, Mathieu Lachance. There are a lot of French up there, but he goes by Matt too. And Matt is the lead off for the book, and his section is called Modeling the Extreme, and he covers how he modeled a real decrepit CN snowplow. And it's really interesting, because on the second spread, I had to put a little caption in there, a little note that said the photos in the circles are prototype, because when you see the prototype photos next to his model, you cannot tell. He's that good at replicating the prototype. So Matt is another guy that I think has some online presence, but has gone under the radar in terms of, the publications. So some of these guys are worth a second, third, fourth, or 10th look, in my opinion.
And what scales are represented throughout the book? You mentioned a couple so far, and as far as the scales go, I mean, what you're presenting here, I assume, is applicable whether you're looking at somebody doing this in HO or. So what all scales are there, and is it something that you could look at and go, well, I could do that in N, or I could use that in O?
There's variety. There's F, there's O, HO. I don't believe we have any N. ON3. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's primarily HO. Yeah, I would think that some of these techniques are applicable. I mean, the techniques, some are translatable to smaller scales, but not all of them. You just have to experiment. Certainly Rob just doesn't show any techniques per se, although I show his modeling work throughout his section, but he talks more about just paint in general and how paint is put together, and how the working times for oil and acrylic, and professional paint versus student grade, which probably a lot of people don't think about. Professional grade has more pigment in it, and model railroaders, as we all know, oftentimes can be notoriously cheap when it comes to paint. Rob wants to make the point that, hey, if you buy a better quality paint, not only will the paint fidelity be better, but it will last longer. So in the long run, buying high quality paints, cost wise, kind of is a wash, because if you blow through a craft paint and then it fades over time, versus buying a high quality professional grade that lasts you 2 years out of the tube, but your colors don't fade, well, you figure it out.
And that's an interesting kind of side thing. Again, you think this is just going to show things like how to do rust or how to do, scenery, but that's a neat aspect to kind of a behind the scenes, or understanding the products you're using, that, again, as you say, a lot of modelers either don't know, wouldn't think about that.
Exactly. And another example, Tony, is Rob Spangler. Now, Rob's a well-known modeler, and what he covers in the book isn't anything scenic, but what he talks about is transitional scenes on your layout. So there is some offshoots in the book, and of course Rob's modeling is exquisite, and so I think modelers will enjoy that too, because not only as modelers do we have to think about how to paint and weather our models, but how are the models presented within our model scenes? And so Rob talks about transitions, which relates to composition, which relates to the overall impression that we make with our layouts. So that's important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I'm actually looking at that in this beautiful book, by the way. The physical touch of a book is important to me. I'm a tangible guy, and it's just so well done, very well printed and put together. You don't sell this by the pound, do you, Scott? Because it'd be expensive. It's a nice, thick, great publication here.
Well, thanks. And I was impressed when I got my copies. I thought, oh gosh, this thing's got some nice heft to it. So if you are interested in buying a book based on weight, you might be attracted to this book. So
that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a nice feature.
And it's for those that don't, it's 8.5 by 11. It's a soft cover. And how many pages?
It is 120 total with the covers. 120 interior plus cover, and it's White River has a good printer that they use, and Tony's well acquainted with that, and they did an excellent job. Of course, as a graphic designer, when I look at it, I go, oh yeah, I see a little something that could have been done a little bit better, but that's what graphic designers do. They critique you go to the newsstand and you look through magazines and you go, oh my word, why did they do it that way? But to the average guy, it looks fantastic. And, one thing, speaking of design, being in the design profession, some of the designers out there who will peruse through the book will say, oh my goodness, look what Scott did. He jumped across the gutter. Now the gutter is the center of where the book is bound. So when you open up a book and you look at a 2-page spread, the gutter is in the middle. Well, some of the subject matter, i.e. the trains, got cut, in the gutter. But I knew that going in, and that's kind of a no-no. You never put someone's face in the gutter or the focal point of your subject matter. But again, I wanted to blow up the photos large enough where modelers could really appreciate the detail. So that was a sacrifice. That was something that, I had to do. And all you got to do is open the book a little bit wider and you'll see the nice overall large photos. So
I'm having no problem whatsoever. And what they say, the rules of art, you learn the rules and then you learn how to break them, and you broke them. And, right. And now what you have is a fantastic book with these, like you said, these large spreads. I'm looking right now at the opening of Terrific Trees, the Neil Schofield section, and just that 2-page. I wouldn't want to see this picture any other way than a full spread like this. This is just absolutely gorgeous stuff.
Well, that's an amazing photo. And Neil's Terrific Trees, I didn't even know about that technique. Those super sage trees, that's something I never even paid attention to. So when I saw that tree, I thought, good night, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because it looks just like the real bark. And then by the time you put the polyfiber, which is the traditional super tree approach, and you put on ground foam or super leaf or whatever you want, you've got an amazing looking tree. And it's a quick technique. It's only 4 steps, and boom, you got a great tree. So check it out. Super trees, terrific trees.
And I noticed you do highlight the modelers. Ray and I were talking about this before we started recording today, how the modelers are represented. There's like a picture of them and some information, because I think a lot of us, as much as you like to see what they're doing, it's like, well, what is that guy into, or what is that guy model, or you like, a little bit of background on the person. And I think that's present in the book too.
Exactly, Tony. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I had to have in the book. I wanted to have short little bios of each contributor, because all these guys are individuals. They're unique, and I wanted just to tell the readers something about who the person is who's doing this amazing modeling. And then I also took a different approach where I wanted to have some fun. I have one of those phone apps where you can stylize different photos. So I stylized the mugshots that they sent me. Each one is a different approach. So as you leaf through the book, you can see how I made them look, and hopefully these guys are like their style. I sent it to all of them; they all approve, so it's all good.
Nice. Well, I'll tell you one thing. My big takeaway from a book like this, and just again, phenomenally done, very well compiled and edited and set up. It's almost like cracking a code for me. It's like, as a guy that wants to learn how to do this stuff, do the scenery, weather is, everything on my layout right now looks like it's right out of the box, and want to get that look. This is the recipe book in sense, in the code that's cracked on how are these guys doing this stuff. And it's just invaluable information that you've been able to compile here.
Ray, that is so important. And you guys are good interviewers. I like how you bring up these points and then I can just bounce off them.
That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, no, that's great. No. Yeah, I'm complimenting you. It's awesome. There's a modeler in the book his name's Evan McCallum. He's primarily a military modeler, and that's where I discovered him online. And Evan, for a number of years, he would do his tanks and his other military scenes, and then once a year he would do a railroad car, an HO scale weathering job. And his approach is very straightforward. And for anyone who's just beginning in weathering, go and picks up the book, go check out Evan's approach, because it's exactly what you just described, Ray. You cannot feel intimidated once you read through how Evan does his weathering. And then you can get the results that he gets. And when you look at the photos of his results, you're like, oh man, if I can get those kind of results, this is how I'm thinking personally. If I can get those kind of results, I'm diving in and going for it. So yeah, you're right, that presenting these techniques in a way that make it approachable for a lot of modelers is going to get modelers diving in and actually doing it. Like you can admire Tom Johnson's work, but and Tom is just a photo essay in the book, but a lot of the techniques in the book are similar to what Tom does. So you can admire his work and frankly be intimidated by it and think, oh, I could never get to that level. Well, yes, you can. You just have to dive in. And if the book helps you dive in, then it's accomplished one of its goals for sure.
You bring up Tom Johnson. I want to share about Tom Johnson, obviously a former art teacher and still has the heart of a teacher. I reached out to him about his trees because I was so inspired. Of course, had him on the podcast here. And I asked him, I said, asked for like a shopping list. And what I got in return was like it was like a 10 paragraph step-by-step dissertation on how to make trees. It was phenomenal. Like, you talk about a guy who's, willing to teach, and it seemingly you've compiled a great list of people that kind of have that same mentality. They not only do they do it, they're willing to tell somebody how they do it. And that's what makes the hobby grow and move forward, is that willingness to share that information.
Yes. Tom's that way. And another one of the contributors, Butch Eiler, is that way too. In fact, Butch will be at St. Louis again this year in one of the learning stations. That's where modelers, there's several learning stations throughout the venue, and modelers can walk up to a guy like Butch and inquire and see his techniques firsthand. I mean, talk about invaluable. And Butch covered his amazing technique of modeling bulges on gonds. Gonds get beat to heck in their role on the railroad. And so Butch was one of the innovators of how to model those bulging sides on Gons. And then we also included a small section on how he created ghost lettering on a rail box car. So modelers might find that very interesting as well.
Now, you said you're at the end of the book, Scott. You've got one, and for those that want to see more of Scott's work, you've been doing a series in Railroad Model Craftsman monthly too. Can you tell us a little bit about what you contributed to your own book and the series you've been presenting in RMC?
Sure, thanks. I contributed just one page to it's the very last page in the book opposite the inside back cover, and it's called Using a Simplified Color Palette. I follow a lot of professional artists online, and there's a fella online that has a oil painting course that he offers, but he has a lot of free content. And one video that he put out was how to use a simplified palette. In other words, modelers are inundated with all kinds of products that are designed to make it easy for them to get certain colors and effects. But if a modeler understands a little bit about color theory, they can create their own colors from just a few colors on the color wheel. And I think that's important information to understand and know. Because if you don't understand a little bit of color theory, then when you're trying to attain a specific color or get an effect on one of your models, and you get frustrated because you can never quite get it, and there's perhaps no color that matches it exactly, well, then what do? Well, that's why following professional artists can teach modelers how to, get an effect that they want. And so this simplified color palette uses 5 colors off the color wheel. You've got ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, and crimson for the 3 primary colors, and then burnt umber and white as supplemental colors. And of those colors, you should be able to create virtually any color of the millions that you have available out there. But what I'm showing is how to match a color. In other words, this professional oil painter that I follow, he shows in one of his videos how to match any color with this simplified palette. And I thought that was valuable for modelers to know, because it's kind of a mystery. Like when you see professional artists painting and you wonder, okay, they don't all get done in one day. Well, when they come back to their painting, how do they match those colors that are already on their canvas? And it's just a total mystery to most people. But if you understand how to match colors, then you can go back and you can recreate the color that they already laid down. So I hope that makes sense. But and I hope the step-by-step on this last page is valuable to people, because it really isn't that complicated to match any color. And if people practice just a little bit, they start to see, oh, I see how this works. This really does allow me to match any color or mix any color. So that's valuable stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And where it's placed is perfect. Rob Arsenault in his section talks about paint. And then right after, you're talking about matching paint, because it's a challenge. And for me, I know I've tried to match color before, and you start with, 2 ounces of each color. And next thing you know, you got a 5-gallon bucket of paint sitting next to you, trying to still match the color and throw stuff in. So I know other modelers too, that's a challenge in figuring paints out. So definitely some great information. And like I said, it's kind of like cracking the code here with this book.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, these 13 contributors are very talented guys, and they're, in my opinion, definitely worth taking a look and enjoying what they've created and what's presented in the book. And yeah, when you have talent, you got to show it and share it.
And the book is available now. I think it started shipping June or early July. As I say, I just saw copies of it. And where can you find the book?
You can just go to White River's bookstore. If you just go online and Google White River Productions, you'll find their website. And then on their website, they have a link to go to their store or their books and click on that. And I believe this book is on the last page of the book catalog online. So just go to just click the links till you get to the last page and you can order the book. And that'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
And I assume lots of hobby shops that carry White River periodicals would no doubt have this as they do annuals and such. So you can also check at your local hobby store.
Yes. In fact, when I was at the Spring Creek show and talked to the Dave Zucker there, who owns Spring Creek, and I said, "Did you happen to have?" "Oh yeah, I've got that book." So it's already at the dealers. So yeah, you can find it.
Yeah, again, the book is called Scenic and Weathering Techniques, compiled and edited by Scott Thornton. Again, we'll share all the links to find this book online. But again, check your local hobby shop. If they're not carrying it, ask them what's wrong with them, because this is a phenomenal book that every modeler should have in front of them. And very glad you came on with us today, Scott, to share this story with us.
Well, thank you so much, Ray and Tony, for having me on. And one last comment, I would be remiss if I didn't mention, this book is considered the first in a series of books sponsored by Railroad Model Craftsman called their Master Craftsman series. So you can expect more of these type of books, maybe not necessarily with my name on it, but more from the Master Craftsman series coming up in the future.
Well, now that you've done one of these, tell me, what provides more satisfaction, a completed modeling project or a completed book?
That's a tough question. But I would have to say the completed book, because this project was a 2-year ordeal, and I enjoyed it, but it took that long. And I know the contributors were like, "When's this book coming out? When is it coming out?" And even White River was like, "Okay, getting a little pressure from both sides." But people need to understand that, just like in the manufacturing side, where it takes time to do something that's quality, it took time, not from my end in terms of the design, but the contributors have lives, and it took that long to get all the material together to present it in the fashion that it is. So modelers just need to know that if they're patient, good things come their way. So that was the case with the book. So yeah, I'm happy that it came out so well, and I hope that modelers really are inspired by what's presented.
Well, we'll definitely be looking forward to more additions to this series and for more of your work. So again, Scott, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, I'll tell you, Tony, it's always a pleasure to have Scott Thornton on the show, and this was just another case of that.
He is a great guy, great modeler. And as I say, as I discovered with a couple of book projects that I've been involved with him in, that an amazing talent in graphics and putting that kind of stuff together. So yeah, I appreciate Scott's one of those people I can call and ask questions, or, just kind of, hey, what do you think about? And yeah, he is a great guy. And this book, I think, is a real asset for that whole end of the modeling world. Yeah,
for sure. He says that he's not going to be doing, maybe not his name on the next one, but I'll tell you, it's going to be hard pressed to find another guy that can collaborate like he did with this one. So it'll be definitely good to see. But let's talk about some model railroading news. What do you got for us?
Well, we've got a lot of new news, and we haven't even hit the NMRA show, which is in Dallas, the third week of August. Right. So there'll be a lot of new products and new releases there. But we're going to kick off with the type of boxcar I know you like. It's high cubes.
Yep.
And there are two, not one, but two new Thrall prototype ScaleTrains HO scale 86-foot high cube boxcars coming. And both of these are all new, never been released before. Certainly in this level, I think the closest thing, one of the old Athearn Blue Box high cubes, and both of the two that Athearn did are kind of a combination of prototypes, that there's nothing perfect on any. But these Thralls are interesting to see. What we've had in the past, Walthers has done a Pullman Standard, and the high cubes offered by Tangent Scale Models are Greenville. So this now adds a high quality Thrall. What's interesting, the rivet counter version, and these are double plug door. There's also the 4-door where they got 2 sets of doors. This first round are the double plugs, and the rivet counter version will be the earliest of early high cubes. So 1964 with high mounted brake, tall ladders on the ends, and running boards on the roof, which you don't always think of for this type of car.
All right.
$51.99 is the selling price right now. The pre-order date is July 31st, and ScaleTrains estimates they'll have them out the end of January. And there are 6 road names. They really look fantastic. These are such fun cars. And then the other one they're doing, there's an operator version, also a Thrall prototype, but newer. It's about a 1967, so no running boards, low brake wheel. And although it's an operator, which is, kind of their little less detail to it all, this car works so well for that because there's not a whole lot to it. I talked with Mike Hopkin at ScaleTrains about what will be the differences. And like the door rods, the tracks for the doors will all be separate on the rivet counter. They'll be molded on for the operator. I was happy to find out the ladders on the sides of the car will be separate on both rivet counter and operator. And that operator sells for about $35. Also 6 road names, and they're virtually the same as far as decoration goes. The difference being the rivet counter Rio Grande just has the small white flying Rio Grande on a brown car, and the operator version will have the kind of later look, the Rio Grande Action Road, also on a like boxcar red car. But these should be very exciting. I got to see the Rio Grande and the Santa Fe model at the Spring Creek open house. They had early shots of those, and they're just fun cars. Those big cars like that are really awesome.
Yeah, they definitely stand out on a layout, and it's good to see the operator side getting a car as well. I mean, I think there's a market for that still for a lot of guys who, need to fill a layout up with a lot of cars. That operator level is definitely a good relief. And of course, they got the Southern car here, which I always love a Southern car. Just something about that slogan on the side. Southern serves the South. Just kind of a really kind of simple but yet obvious thing, but very cool. Like to see that.
Very neat. And there will be obviously more production variations and more cars in the future. This is just the first run for both of those. One of the other things coming out, Kato, as we said before we started recording, is it Kato or Kato? And I can remember people, it used to be, Athearn or Athearn, I would hear at times too. But anyway, so Kato has announced more in-scale E-units, and these are going to be earlier E-units, and they're also doing some passenger car sets that, again, early Amtrak, so early 1970s, and probably one of the neatest things in that group is they're going to do that black 4316, known as the Day 1 Amtrak unit, with that unique scheme with the wraparound pointless arrow on its nose, will be coming from Kato.
Not on website yet. Watch for announcement.
Exactly. Yeah, that's they mentioned those recently, and I've had people ask, "Hey, where?" And the specifics are not all there. It is going to be, I think, standard DC, a DC version, and a DCC sound version. But watch Kato's website, katousa.com, to learn more on that. One of the neat things that I just saw is Railroad Model Craftsman is teaming up with Rapido Trains to get a kit bashing award started. Had you seen this? I was really interested to see this happen.
I have not, but I'm all about having contests and awards.
This is going to be a monthly contest, from what I understand. You can go to rrmodelcraftsman.com and look under like the news section. $500 credit to exchange for Rapido products if you're selected. You can read about it more. The Craftsman Award, it mentioned, was launched by Tony Coster in 1972. And it's going to come back. I think it's a neat thing that this is a fun deal to see, but it'll be the RMC Rapido Kit Bashing Award. It'll be published on a bi-monthly basis, so there'll be 6 a year for 2024. And you can go to RMC's website, again, that's rrmodelcraftsman.com, and see what editor Otto Vondruck and Rapido's Jason Schron have put together for this new competition or contest for modelers to participate in.
Awesome. Very, very cool idea.
I got to see at the Spring Creek show 2 examples of a new Trinity 5161 3-bay center flow hopper. This is coming in HO scale from Intermountain Railway, and sharing those with me was their new person, Chris Palomares, which is a name I know that listeners to the podcast and longtime hobbyists will know. Chris was with Athearn. I think he was with Microscale. All kinds of, he's definitely a hobby guy and has landed at Intermountain. And this 5161 was announced some time back, and there have been models of it before. Probably most notably, one of the first was an LBF example, and it was later reissued by Hubert's. And because Intermountain has some of that tooling assets in their collection, I think there was a bit of a thinking, well, that's that car coming back. And no, as Chris showed me, this has got different roof hatches, a different running board style on the roof, different gates on the bottom. This is a later production version and an all-new tooling. And you can go to Intermountain's website and see things on that. That's a Trinity 5161. And again, they had 2 new samples. I'm hoping to get pictures and get those put up on Model Train Resource and get those included in Model Railroad News in the near future to kind of show what this tooling looks like. But it should that'll be a nice car. And that's a modern prototype, I believe, about maybe around 2000 to the late 90s is when it was introduced in North American railroading.
Hey, Mark Herrick. Mark, you listening? They have all the BNSF Heritage Series cars in this run.
Yes. All as the collector in me already went, oh, look at that. And so that whole group with all the different Heritage logos will be part of that release. The other thing from Intermountain that I got to see at Spring Creek Show was their new in-scale F unit. And not that it's new, the tooling, it's still pretty much the same plastic F7A, F7B. It's got a lot of separate, like grabs, handrails, that kind of thing. But what was new for this run, with a change in its DCC sound setup, it got a new chassis. And I guess I need to see one. We've got one coming for review, but it's kind of been enhanced from what it was before. And there's a group of those available now in matching paint schemes A and B units. And there's probably, I think there's a good half dozen and some interesting things like a Whitman green, Katy. There's an NDM. There's a real pretty Alaska in blue and yellow. So these Intermountain F units, back with DCC sound with the new mechanism, new chassis developed for this run.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of options here, like you said, with all these different paint schemes, some older stuff, some great northern stuff, and Alaska, like you said, and MKT. Just awesome. Great selection here.
And I wanted to mention, too, we're going to take a little turn here into brass. I think a lot of people at times forget that there still is a pretty active brass market, both in new products and collecting. And my buddy Matthew Dowd in the Chicago area is having his 2nd annual warehouse sale. This is going to be Wednesday, July 26th. This is in Des Plaines, Illinois. You can find out more by going to resourcerails.com. It's in the afternoon from 3:30 to 7. Giveaways, refreshment, open house tour. You can see his setup. Resource Rails, if you're not familiar with it, they do primarily brass as far as buying up brass and reselling it. They also, though, have plastic, die-cast model trains. And for this sale, he's going to have kind of some of the you fix it and as is. And he's offered those to me at times in the past, saying, hey, I've got this or that, and it's got this problem or that problem, but it may be something you could use for an article. So there's always a lot of fun pieces to look at. So I think I wish I could get to it. It's in Des Plaines, Illinois. Again, resourcerails.com. It's Wednesday, July 26th, and it's their 2nd annual warehouse sale. And I'm pretty sure that he will also be he's always at the St. Louis RPM. So he's going to do that and then turn around and be at the RPM that weekend. but check it out. And if you get on his mailing list every Friday morning, as I'm having my first cup of coffee, I'm waiting to see if that's landed in my inbox, and he lists his like new additions to his vintage brass offerings. And man, there's some neat stuff that pops up at times.
Excellent. Yeah. And like you said, you can couple that along with a trip to the St. Louis RPM.
Yes. Yeah. They wouldn't, if you're traveling or doing that, try to hit both. The other thing too, is we were talking about brass, the North Bank line, and they're up in Oregon. They have just announced a new group of business cars. This is their third group. Beautiful cars. This third group will include CB&Q, Duluth, Mesabi, and Iron Range, Rock Island, Montana Rail Link, Norfolk and Western Pacific. 14 different versions of 5 more cars are planned for release in 2024. Factory finish on them. The models are HO scale brass. We reviewed a handful of them a year or so ago. In fact, Matthew Dowd did that review for me on these run of cars. But boy, business cars are so neat and so unique. They're a perfect thing for the brass format. And these are coming out. If you want more information, I don't think North Bank has a website, but you can email. I've got an ad coming in Model Railroad News, and I'll have information on modeltrainresource.com to show what cars are being done. But you can email nbleaa@gmail.com and ask for information to reserve these, because as with brass, they are limited run. But North Bank line with new HO brass business cars, a third run of them. Imagine having all of them from all 3 runs. What a collection that would be.
Oh, for sure.
And then I really enjoyed, I listened on, I've been traveling a lot, and I listened to a handful of your shows recently, and I listened to the one with Lonnie Bathurst and Scott Thornton on the St. Louis RPM. And what a great show. If folks haven't heard that, go check that out. And that show's right around the corner. What are the dates on it?
Yeah, that's July 28th and 29th. And unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to make this one, but I'm definitely going to put myself on the schedule for 2024 to be out to check this show out. But just because I'm not there doesn't mean that you shouldn't be. So definitely take a listen to that podcast and then hit their website, STLRPM.com. Gives you all the information. They did a phenomenal job with the website. It's just a great resource. If you're looking to travel there, all that information is right there, STLRPM.com.
And what a great show. It's a Friday and Saturday. Friday evening is keynote speaker who will be Otto Vondrak, a Railroad Model Craftsman, will be speaking that evening. Tons of historical societies, manufacturers, in addition to people bringing their models to show those off. Again, it's Friday, and then all day Saturday. It wraps up about 4:00 in the afternoon. And there's that amazing giveaway as everyone's cleaning up and putting things away. They're calling out numbers, and they've got a huge table of prizes. So lots of fun. I'll be there with my assistant editor, Shane Mason, and we'll be wandering around and rail fanning and doing all that stuff for those 2 days. So that's in Collinsville, Illinois, on the east side of the St. Louis area.
Excellent. You're between the St. Louis RPM, and then next month we've got the NMRA National Convention in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We're probably going to be seeing just a lot more news being created in the industry.
I would believe so. I already know a few of the things coming on the NMRA show, so I know that there will be some excitement for sure there. And so, yeah, we'll definitely have a show. I guess that would be our next one, that we'll record in a little over a month with the wrap-up on what was announced at the NMRA.
Yeah, well, somewhere between August and September, we'll be covering all that. But boy, there's just news inside and outside of conventions and shows. It just doesn't stop. So I think we're going to be good for a monthly show for a long time to come here, Tony.
I would say so. All
right. Well, hey, appreciate you stopping by, sharing the news with us, and we look forward to next month.
Thanks a lot, Ray, and I will see each other in Dallas.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Around the Layout. Learn more about today's show on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Around the Layout. Show your support by becoming an operating crew member at patreon.com/Around the Layout podcast. Past episodes and more can be found on our website, aroundthelayout.com. And send us your feedback, aroundthelayout@gmail.com. Thanks for hanging out with us around the layout.